Hello everyone, it's Shannon here for Honeybee Stamps. In today's video, I'm going to create my own die cut panel using the Tropical Bouquets die set. I'm going to die cut several leaves and flowers and put them together and even lift them up with a little craft foam to make this beautiful tropical card. I'm going to start my project with the Tropical Bouquet honey cut set. As you can see, the set comes with a ton of leaves and flowers. I'm actually only going to use one leaf today and a pair of flowers. Now these flowers have a base and kind of like a detail layer or a top layer, so I'm going to pull off both those to create the larger and the smaller flower in that set. So I went ahead and die cut several of those leaves and the flowers out, and I'm going to keep the top flower and I'm going to color it with some Copics to kind of add that yellow center. I've started with the light yellow, which is Y02, then moved on to my medium yellow, which is Y08, then I'll finish up with Y15. Then I'll quickly go back through my colors and just blend it out with Y08 and then Y02. So I just use the medium and the light shades to kind of blend it out. I'm going to repeat that process for all of the tops of my flowers, and I'll even use a little bit of zero to kind of blend out that last tail end of yellow. Now I'm going to move on to my leaves. Now for my leaves, I'm going to ink blend them. I've started with Lucky Clover ink blend, about 2/3 with that, and then I'll move on to Pine Needles Distress ink and ink blend the upper third or the top third. I'm going to repeat that process again for all my leaves. Here you can see all my leaves are finished. I've got 7 leaves and I've also finished all of the flowers too. Now it's time to kind of put them together. So I'll just grab a top and a bottom, make sure I've got them lined up. Then I'll add a little bit of liquid glue to the back side of the top and then just stick it down right with the bottom. So I'll just repeat this process for all my flowers, get them all paired up, and here is the finished result. And I will end up using 4 large flowers and 4 small flowers for this card front. Now I'm going to stamp my sentiment. I have the Sea Breeze stamp set. I pulled off a sentiment stamp from that set, and I'm going to stamp it on some black cardstock. I'm going to do some heat embossing, so I did apply some anti-static powder. Then I inked it up and stamped it in Versamark ink. Then I just dipped it into my white embossing powder and heat set with my heat tool. So I'm just about finished heat setting that. And when I'm finished, I will actually die cut this sentiment out with the matching die. Here you see it die cut out, as well as a blank sentiment out of black cardstock. I'm going to stack these two together, so I added some liquid glue to that blank one and then stacked the stamp one on top. This will just add a tiny bit of dimension so that sentiment kind of pops away from the background. Now I'm going to move on to some pattern paper. This is the Hot Tropics 6x6 pattern paper pad. This pad has so many beautiful, bright, bold pattern papers. I am in love with this pad. I picked out a yellow striped kind of pattern paper today, and I'm going to use that kind of for the background of my raised panel. First thing I'm going to do is kind of arrange all my leaves here, get them kind of so they cover most of the panel. It's okay if they hang off, I'll trim those off. Once I have all my leaves arranged, I'll then move on to my flowers and kind of position those around just till I get it kind of evenly spaced or so it's balanced. And I'll also place down my sentiment too, so I can kind of incorporate the flowers around that. Now that my sentiment and all my die cuts are arranged, I'm going to grab a piece of press and seal. This piece needs to be bigger than an A2 panel, and then I will just stick it down over all of my die cuts and my sentiment and the panel and just press around. I want to get all of that stuck down. I want to also have the panel stuck to the press and seal as well. So I'm going around and giving it a good press to make sure they're stuck down. Now I'm going to grab my scissors here and I'm going to trim off the excess. And I am going to just make sure that blade is right up against the panel so that these die cuts get a nice straight edge. Now I should have used a fresh piece of press and seal because my stick here wasn't as good as it could be, so I definitely recommend that. But if you don't have press and seal, you can still do this kind of technique. You can just use tape. Use a low tack tape like painter's tape or micro pour tape. Use several long pieces to kind of hold all those die cuts down to the panel and then just trim off as well. So that works as well, and I've done that several times too instead of and when I didn't have press and seal. So now I've trimmed all the overhang, flipped my panel of die cuts over, and now I'm going to add the dimension. I have these small squares of craft foam, and I'm just going to add them all around my leaves and flowers. Once I have all the foam and even some foam dots kind of placed around my die cuts, I'll then remove the backing, and then I'll carefully flip this over and position it right on to that panel of pattern paper. Definitely going to take my time here and try to get this right, because you really only have one go on this. You don't want to kind of get it stuck down and have to lift up some of those and adjust them, because you may damage the pattern paper in the back. So now that all of my leaves and flowers are stuck down, I'm going to actually adhere the sentiment down to the front. I could have had that stuck with craft foam, but I wanted to make sure that it was totally straight, so I avoided adding any craft foam to the back side of the sentiment when I was adding all those foam squares and dots. So now I'm just going to add some liquid glue to the back side of this panel and adhere it onto an A2 top folding white card base. And here's the finished result. I'll hold up to the camera so hopefully you can get a good look at all of the ink blending and coloring, as well as the dimension. I really like creating these kind of cards out of die cuts. I think it is a fun way to use them instead of just creating like floral arrangements, kind of using it to create a full patterned background. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you'd like any more information on the products I used, please head over to Honeybee Stamps. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.